Hi there. Well, today's video is going to be a review of the Lorac Nude Necessities palette. I purchased this at Ulta. It does have 12 shadows, 6 are shimmer and 6 are matte. Let me go ahead and pop this open and show you the inside. The shadows aren't arranged according to finish. The shimmers and the mattes are all combined together. As you can see, it has a lot of really subtle shades in here. I had seen swatches of these online and I felt like this was going to be a really great palette for me for spring and summer in particular. I thought it was going to give me a wide variety of looks that I could put together that were all going to be very subtle but really pretty. So that was sort of what I thought going into this palette, and now my thoughts have changed quite a bit. I do have some pros and cons I want to share with you, and then just some overall thoughts. So let's go ahead and get started. Starting with the pros of the palette, I'm going to go ahead and pop in a picture here for you. I wanted to show you what the palette looks like before I swatched anything, what it looks like new, and then also add in for you some swatches on my skin. In MAC, I am an NW20, so my skin is definitely fair. I'm not the palest of shades, but it is very fair skin. So you can kind of get an idea of what these shadows would look like against fair skin. I think the packaging on this is really nice. You are getting a nice weighted packaging. It is, of course, going to show a lot of fingerprints. It's sort of this gunmetal metallic, and it is going to get pretty mucked up a little bit pretty quickly. That really doesn't have a bearing to me on how I feel about the product inside. As long as I like what's inside, I don't really care if the outside gets fingerprints, but it's just something worth mentioning. The shadows in this palette are nicely formulated, but they're not the pigmentation that I've experienced in my previous Lorac Pro palettes. These are much more soft and much more subtle. You do have a nice combination of shades as far as very light colors, pale colors, transition colors, highlight colors. Let me just go ahead and show you this again. So you can see you've got some colors down there on the end here that are great for highlighting. And then there's also some shimmer shades that I think would be good either on their own or over the top of maybe a darker color. This is a really nice palette if you want a very nude, no makeup look, something very natural. You're definitely not going to get any dramatic looks out of this palette. Now that I've talked to you about some of the pros of the palette, unfortunately, I have to move on to the cons, and my list of cons is a lot longer than my list of pros. What makes this palette what it is a nude palette is also, I think, what it has going against it. It may be intended to be a nude palette for a no makeup look, but I also think that is sort of working against it. The colors just don't have a lot of variety, especially once you apply them to your skin. So you're not getting a lot of contrast between your lighter and darker colors. I really felt like there was a couple of colors in here, particularly these here and this one here, that I was going to be able to use as a crease shade or a lid shade, and then have another color as a transition and then a highlight. And that didn't work out to be the case for me. All of the colors, once applied on my skin or either applied or blended together, all pretty much look the same, with the exception of the very light colors here on the end. I was really disappointed that I couldn't tell one color from the other. As an example of that, I am wearing 6 different colors on my lids today, and this is the best look that I could put together with it. That being said, I am not a makeup artist, so maybe I don't have a grasp of a way to apply these that I would get the most contrast, but for an everyday makeup user, this just didn't have enough variety for me. I mentioned to you in the pros that this is a nice collection of very nude shades, and that is true, but you are really getting very little pigmentation. So if you have very, very fair skin, lighter than mine, I think you're going to pull a little bit more color with this, but if you have my skin into a medium range, you're really not going to get any color payoff. In fact, I think if you have a medium skin tone, many of these colors will not show up on you at all, except maybe the lighter shimmer shades or the very lightest shades that you could possibly use as highlighters or, as I mentioned before, over the top of something else. I have just experienced much better payoff with Lorac palettes before, and I guess in a nude, no makeup look, you want something really subtle, but I still think you want to be able to see what you're putting on your lids. You want to be able to create just a little bit of contrast or contour or something, and I just don't get that with this palette at all. The other thing is the formulation. They are silky shadows. They are soft, but they are extremely powdery. I'm also going to pop in a picture here. It's a really bad picture that I took, not very well in focus, but I was trying to use one of the shades, and I want to say it was this one right here. That one right there. I was trying to use that as a contour shade or in my crease, and the fallout on this is just crazy. And all of the shadows are powdery, but some of them are insanely powdery, and it really made a mess. My eyes just got a little bit irritated from that. I'm not very sensitive to eye makeup products, but this made my eyes really red and irritated and itchy because there's just so much powder fallout. The problem with that also is I'm trying to keep color in my crease, and you sort of expect a certain amount of fallout, but this was going completely down onto my lower lid and under my eye. It was just going everywhere, so I didn't feel like I had a lot of control over it. Now, when I used a more short, dense brush, I was able to get a little bit better color payoff, but still nothing really noticeable. And I think why that really bothers me is because you're paying $30 for 12 shadows, and this seems like a palette that probably could have been narrowed down into 5 or 6 shadows. Maybe a less expensive palette, a travel palette, just a very small nude palette. I feel like there's a lot of repetition in here. So you're paying for shadows that you can't really use or need. I mean, I guess obviously you can use them, but they're so similar that you don't need all of them. So that was a really big disappointment in this palette for me. With all of that being said, I do think that this palette could be good for some people. Those people would be people with really, really fair skin. If you want a subtle look and you have very pale or fair skin, I think this would be really good on you. If you're someone who is new to makeup and you're really not comfortable creating looks and you sort of want to have a palette that's foolproof, this might be a good place for you to start. You really can choose from any of these colors and not have to worry about making big mistakes or having anything that's just too dramatic or obvious. If you are the parent of a teenager, someone young that's just getting into makeup, this might be a perfect palette for them because, again, for the same reason with someone that's new to makeup, you wouldn't have to worry about them creating any looks that are too garish. These would be school appropriate. And it just would be a really great place for them to start. You wouldn't really have to worry about them pairing any of these colors together. They're all going to work together, and they are going to create a very subtle, natural look. Also, if you're someone who is going on maybe a beachy vacation and you want to feel like you even out the color on your lids, you want to have something really subtle, a no makeup look, this is going to give you the most subtle of no makeup looks. This might be a good option for you as well. Just know what you're getting into with this palette. When Lorac says it's a nude palette, they do mean that quite literally. These shades are very, very nude, very natural, and if you have a medium skin tone, these may not show up on you at all. They may do nothing more than just even out your lid. I do think this palette has its place. I do think there are people that are going to enjoy it. The newer makeup people, as I mentioned, maybe younger people that are just getting into makeup, this is going to be a great way to practice eye looks that are going to be pretty foolproof. This might also be a good palette to accompany palettes that have bolder looks, bolder shadows that are more dramatic. This might be a good pairing with that because that way you'd have some transition shades, you'd have some shimmer shades to put over the top of darker colors, and maybe some highlights as well. But I still think this could have been edited down to a much smaller palette. You still would have gotten, in my opinion, the same variety with just a fewer number of shadows, maybe at a better price point. So while I cannot recommend this palette for everyone, I do think it might be great for those that I mentioned. So I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye.